Hey guys, Wyatt Claypool here. The first week of Canada's federal election campaign did not go very well for Mark Carney and the Liberals. And although they and their legacy media allies can point to polls mostly showing that the Liberals are still leading the Conservatives by 1 to 5 points, the problem is things change. Look back at 1993 after the Progressive Conservatives swap out Brian Mulroney for Kim Campbell. For a short while, Kim Campbell, the PCs, rocket in terms of their approval before falling back down to earth. At one point, they even eclipsed John Chrétien and the Liberals, but it doesn't matter. Public opinion eventually catches up with reality and the news cycle, and both of those things are going against the Liberals right now to the point where they're flailing around in desperation, trying to throw mud on Pierre Poilievre and the Conservatives, and it's just not going to work. I want to talk first about this made up issue that they had yesterday, and then I want to go on to Pierre Poilievre and the Conservatives actually having a lot of the momentum in Atlantic Canada, specifically in a province that the Conservatives didn't win any seats in 2015, 2019, or 2021. They are having a big rally in PEI. Anyways, before I get into it though, guys, reminder if you like my videos and my federal election coverage, make sure to like this video, subscribe if you're not yet a subscriber, and leave a comment. It really helps us on the algorithm. So yesterday, the Liberals, having no prospects, started going after Pierre Poilievre because they didn't have any real things to hit Poilievre with over this made-up issue of Poilievre saying biological clock, which is apparently like a crime against women to mention, even though he didn't even exactly mention it in the context of women specifically. Here is the 10 seconds that the Liberals are trying to make a lot of hay about.
We will not forget that young 36-year-old couple whose biological clock is running out faster than they can afford to buy a home and have kids.
This is something that loads of Liberal MPs are posting about. Who cares? By the way, he's correct. I don't know why this is controversial. He's talking about the fact that young Canadians cannot buy a house and have kids because of how bad the economy and the market is. By the way, housing prices have literally doubled since Justin Trudeau became Prime Minister in 2015. And by the way, Mark Carney was the economic advisor for 5 years towards the end of Trudeau's tenure. So this is on him too. The idea that this is offensive is, in fact, I find quite offensive to Canadians who actually care about physical reality and needing to live their lives. Oh, but he said biological clock and he's treating women like baby factories. No, he's not. He's treating people like human beings who want to have families, be able to buy a house and actually own it. That's what's going on here. And gender theory activist Amy Ham pointed out that this is something that the CBC has used as a term in the past. Look at this. She said, not the CBC too. And below is a headline that says, when the biological clock gets loud, 3 perspectives on pressure to have kids. Yeah, it's almost like it's a commonly used term, and the Liberals have got nothing here. The Liberals in the last week have had to drop 2 candidates for massive ethical issues. The Conservatives have also had to get rid of 2, but it was over like dumb misstatements that were going to be distracting, and they got rid of them right away. The Liberals dragged their feet on getting rid of people who were like ex-wife beaters and people who were basically like asking for the Chinese government to arrest conservative candidates. Absolutely nuts. Carney obviously doesn't have any momentum. He was in Georgetown yesterday at just what was like a pub event. The man who is prime minister running for re-election in the federal election period is having to do small-scale pub events in Georgetown, a swing district where you want to have momentum and energy. He hasn't really released any policies either. His only policy is like this housing investment fund where they're going to have the government for a grand total of $36 billion probably build no houses, because this is a Trudeau era policy that he first announced back in like 2017, that we're going to take billions of dollars and we're going to build houses ourselves. And like nothing got built. And Mark Carney is basically saying, how about we do that with a bigger price tag? And that's it. will still not be successful because in his entire pitch for this policy, he did not mention deregulation and reducing all the bureaucracy around getting land use approvals, getting approvals to start building, having to have work stopped so that another inspector can swing by to make sure that you're not, I don't know, poisoning a lake for no reason. He's not a serious person. But now I want to jump over to what the Conservatives are currently doing, which is having massive rallies in ridings like or in provinces like PEI. I will remind you, this footage is coming from a province that only has around 175,000 people living in it, and there are 4 ridings that are actually each potentially winnable for the Conservatives. I probably have to mute that because of the music. But this is the size of a rally on Prince Edward Island. Maybe people are coming from different provinces. They're driving over the bridge into PEI. I kind of doubt it. This is probably 1,500 people. Maybe it's 2,000 people. In a province of 175,000 people, not all of which are actually voters. So more than probably 1.5% of people who live on PEI came out to see Pierre Poilievre. That is very good news at the same time that the Carney Liberals are having to pretend they have bigger crowds than they do. This is what the Liberals posted recently to show how big their rally is tonight in Winnipeg. But what you'll notice is that it starts looping pretty fast. This is a 5-second video. Because in reality, outside of these 2 stretched out lines of people that, let's give them 1,000 here, it's not that many. They just don't have the energy on the ground. And energy on the ground doesn't mean necessarily that you're going to win the election, but it does help a lot. What the polls have been showing, even the ones showing the Liberals ahead by 5 points, 6 points like Angus Reid, they also show that the Liberals' support base is extremely soft, that they might not really show up and vote. This is what happened for Kim Campbell and the PCs. When Kim Campbell replaced Brian Mulroney, suddenly there was that artificial second look at the PCs. Oh, hey, new fresh face is in power as leader. Let's give them another look. And so people start picking PC in the phone polls. And then as they start to get to know Kim Campbell and they start to see that the PC policies haven't shifted at all, people start moving back to the Liberals like they were going to vote for before. And so what we have here, I think, with Mark Carney is that we are in the latter half of his honeymoon phase after taking over for Justin Trudeau. And like what Main Street research is showing, his approval rating is quickly falling as people are realizing that he is not the solution to all of their problems. He does not contain all their hopes and dreams within him. In fact, he is a very peevish man who is not very good at speaking in front of people. And yet we are supposed to expect that he is going to hold Donald Trump and Xi Jinping's feet to the fire. Here is another good piece of polling news. This is from David Coletto. He just released it an hour ago, and it's voting intentions based on education. This is extremely good for the Conservatives. I cannot overemphasize. High school or less is going 46% Conservative, 30 Liberal, 11 NDP, 4 Green, 6 Bloc. Doesn't really matter. College, people with trades degrees and certificates and whatnot, 38% Conservative, 38 Liberal, 13 NDP. And then we have university, which is 34 Conservative, 48 Liberal. The problem is that the Conservatives are overperforming with the university educated, where the Liberals are underperforming heavily with high school or less. The problem here, and if the polls start improving wholesale for the Conservatives, this is a very good sign for the Conservatives because already they're leading heavily with 40% of the population. Because people who have full 4-year bachelor degrees or higher are still only about 30% of the population. And depending on the province, it can be even less than that. Like Newfoundland and Labrador, a lot of people work on oil and gas rigs. They maybe have trades degrees, sometimes it's bachelor degrees or less, or their high school diplomas or less. And many of them work in other areas where you just don't need a bachelor degree. And so the problem is those bachelor degrees are also going to be heavily concentrated in ridings that the Liberals were never going to lose and the Conservatives weren't even trying for, like in downtown Toronto areas like University Rosedale, where Chrystia Freeland is. And so with the Conservatives leading with 40% of the population and then being tied with the trade school degrees and lagging behind the Liberals when it comes to bachelor degree holders, that sets them up if this very well to win if this becomes a high turnout election. And I do not see this having low turnout like in 2021. 2021, conservatives didn't want to show up for O'Toole, and yet they still won the popular vote. In this election, people who like the conservatives are definitely going to be voting for Pierre Poilievre because they actually like him. And so if this election has a turnout rate of 65%, 70%, you're going to have a lot of those high school diploma holders who don't usually vote turning out in large waves. Because when the turnout is only 53%, that usually favors the Liberals because it means those who are older and have bachelor degrees are going to be making up a far larger portion of the voting population. High turnout is extremely good for the Conservatives, so that's why I actually will plug, guys. Get a lawn sign, promote the fact you're voting Conservative, make it the default in your riding. Even if it's a swing riding, we should have so many Conservative signs up on private lawns. Everyone in the neighborhood realizes that it is becoming the default, the bandwagon to jump on board of. Anyways, I do want to pull up a few more videos from this rally that the Conservatives had. This is pretty amazing that you can get this many people out in PEI. And by the way, 338, while they're still showing all four of the PEI ridings going Liberal, that's considering the fact that PEI includes, or the 338 includes all the pollsters I think are just flat out, like just bad, like Ecos. They're showing them Liberal likely, but if things shift 3 or 4 points back to the Conservatives, I think the Conservatives take 2 of the PEI ridings at least. So, and that's, I believe, what the path to victory for the Conservatives are. It's not the GTA. Maybe the Conservatives do well in certain Mississauga or Brampton ridings. Let's assume they win none of them. Let's assume they also win no Toronto downtown core. You don't need it. You need Southwest Ontario, Niagara, Windsor, grab up some of the northern ridings, steal Angus, Charlie Angus's Thunder Bay riding, do decently well in the Maritimes and BC, and we're fine. That is what the Conservatives need to at least get a minority government. And a minority government is completely fine to get, because if the Conservatives get a minority, they can try and do as much good as possible in a year and a half. And everywhere the Liberals and the NDP obstruct them, they can use that as an excuse to have another election and say, hey, we got a bunch of good stuff done, but we can't get the rest of it done with these guys trying to oppose us at every turn. So right now, I think that it's silly whenever I see Conservatives on social media getting really doomerish over this election. Oh my goodness, Leger just has us down by 5. In 2021, pollsters had the Conservatives down by 8 and 12 at the start of the election. Things change. Get a lawn sign, volunteer, and it can easily be a Conservative victory still. Anyways, so that should be it for me today, guys. Hopefully my videos don't seem so all over the place, but it's more so I see 3 or 4 issues and I see a general connection between all of them. And so then I end up turning it into its own video. The Liberals trying to hit Poilievre the biological clock comment just demonstrates how unserious they are. And it demonstrates how desperate they are, because if they truly thought they were leading by 5 or 6 points on a federal level, they wouldn't be doing all the shenanigans of destroying Conservative signs and trying to obstruct them and hitting Poilievre over silly nonsense, because they know that the lack of people showing up to see Mark Carney is reflective of the fact that they're probably not going to show up to vote for him either. Doesn't mean a lot of people might not. It doesn't mean a lot of people wouldn't vote Liberal if they suddenly appeared at the polling station, but suddenly appearing at the polling station and submitting a ballot for the Liberals is very different from being tired at work and then deciding whether or not you want to stand in line to vote for a man who can barely articulate himself in front of the press. Anyways, so that's it for me today, guys. Make sure to like the video, subscribe to the channel, leave a comment, do all that great stuff, and I'll see you later.